Yes, you read that title correctly. I'm talking about a luxury watch, a watch that feels really good, and using it as a beta watch. But how am I going to do that? Hello, you're watching James. My name's James. You're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. And today, I'm talking about buying a luxury watch for an affordable price and using it as a beta watch. Let me explain. For the last 6 or 7 months, I've had this idea in my head and I've been going through the motions of trying to have this outcome that I've achieved today. I'm going to be talking to you about this process, and at the end of this video, I'm going to show you the watch that ended up arriving on my doorstep today. Now, when I talk about a beta watch, I'm talking about a daily watch, something you can wear day in, day out, not worry too much about. You can wear it to work, you can wear it in the shed when you're building something, you can wear it out gardening. And for me, generally, for you, generally, that's probably going to be a GShock. A GShock is the perfect beta watch. It's a watch that does everything you want, it can take a knock, and it's affordable. And I have a GShock. I've had a few GShocks. I like GShock, and I agree that they are probably the best beta watches out there. The only problem I have with GShocks is that although I like them, although I appreciate them, I don't really like wearing them. I don't mind wearing them, I think they're perfectly fine, but when I look at them, I see the time and I don't even think about it being a watch on my wrist. I know some people do, and that's fantastic. I wish I felt like that because, well, they're an affordable watch. Me, unfortunately, there are other watches that make me feel really, really passionate about them, that get me excited. When I look at them, I go, oh, wow. And because I wear this watch, this sort of beta watch, so often, because of my line of work, because of the things I like to do in the shed, building things, because of the bits and pieces that I do in my lifestyle, going hiking, because I end up wearing that sort of beta daily watch so often, it means that I end up wearing my GShock fairly often. And what I would like to do is exchange the GShock for something a little bit special. Now, I understand that I will not be able to wear this luxury watch in every circumstance. There's still going to be times when the GShock is going to be the right watch for me. But what I'm talking about is those 9 times out of 10 where I know I could wear a nice watch, but not be too worried about knocking it. Those 9 times out of 10 I can wear that instead of my GShock, and then when I know I'm going into a situation where, yeah, okay, it's probably going to get damaged, I'll pair my GShock today. And I've set myself a whole bunch of rules. And I've set myself these rules because this is what I want from this watch. Firstly, it needs to be a luxury watch, or it needs to have that feel of luxury to it. And I want that because I want to be wearing this watch, which I wear a lot, and go, wow, I like that. I want it to be affordable. It needs to be at a price that I can justify beating it around a little bit. I don't want to be sort of too worried about it. I don't want to be worried if it gets a scratch. I want to feel comfortable allowing it to get some scratches, take a hit, and I'm going to be okay with that. It needs to be an automatic watch because, well, that's what I like and that's what I want. And it actually has to be legible and preferably have a day and date because it's going to be a functional watch as well as hopefully a nice watch to wear. Now, you may ask, how much money am I sort of putting into this watch? Well, I have thought about it because the GShock, well, you can get them for $100 or $200, and that's not a huge amount of money. For the extra experience, the extra happiness that I'm going to have from wearing this watch, I am willing to spend more. And I've thought about it, and I'm willing to spend up to $800. Preferably a lot less than that, but that's the budget I've set for myself. With that amount of money, and I'm talking Australian dollars here, not US dollars, thankfully, for that amount of money, if I knock it, if I scratch it, I'm going to be okay with it. So how am I actually going to do this? How am I going to find a watch that fits everything I want and has that certain level of luxury feel to it for under 800 Australian dollars? Preferably not $800, preferably a lot less than that, because it's going to be very difficult, and I'm very aware of that. There are 2 ways that I think I might be able to achieve this. Firstly, if I find a watch that is heavily, heavily discounted, something that perhaps hasn't really sold, and for one reason or another, people haven't wanted it, and it's sort of trying to clear them out now. Now, I think there's a possibility of this, because they may not be a watch that immediately attracts my attention in the normal way that I'm thinking about watches, when I'm trying to think about a really nice watch to wear. But this particular watch that I'm looking for, I'm coming from a bit of a different perspective. I have other ideas about it, other wants from it. So I'm looking at it from a different perspective. And it may allow me to sort of open my mind to watches that may not have interested me earlier, because it may tick the boxes and be something interesting that I want to wear. And maybe one of those watches that ticks the boxes for me that I might want to wear in this sort of circumstances, maybe on clearance. But I think more likely to happen is it be secondhand. And in fact, I actually kind of want it to be secondhand because I want it to be worn, loved, and already sort of worn in. I want there to be some scuffs on it, some scratches, so that I'm not freaking out about it. The idea behind this watch is for me not to freak out about wearing this one. I want to wear it. I want to enjoy it. I want to not worry if I whack it on a door frame. Unlike some of my other watches where I do worry a little bit. The idea behind this, it is a beater watch. It is a watch that I can beat a little bit within a certain sort of circumstances. Obviously, I'm not looking to run this one over with a car. So being secondhand is probably going to tick the boxes for me. So let me talk you through the process of what I looked at, what I considered, what I discounted, and then finally what I ended up with. Because firstly, I wanted to start at sort of probably the higher end watches or the more expensive watches that I thought, you never know, I might be able to find one. And then work my way down the scale of prices. And then hopefully come across something. So first thing I thought of, the watch that I really want to own, which I knew probably would not fit into the price range, is a Grand Seiko. Especially when I wanted an automatic Grand Seiko. And yes, I could not find one. I found this one. It's a really, really nice watch. I actually really like it and I'd really quite like to own it. But two problems with it. Firstly, outside the price range. Outside the price range by quite a lot, at least 3 times. Plus, it's probably a little bit too dressy for this kind of watch anyway. If it was $800, I'd probably still buy it, but I then wouldn't be using it as this beater watch. I'd just be enjoying this Grand Seiko. So unfortunately, no Grand Seikos for me. Next, I thought, well, Omega. I love Omega watches. I think that's a great brand. And I know I've seen Omegas out there. Some Omegas that maybe not as popular as others, that are getting a little bit older, that have been used and abused a little bit. Maybe I might be able to get an Omega down at this sort of price range. And I did find a few, but unfortunately, there were still some issues. Firstly, most of them that were at this price range or just above were either too old, like super vintage watches, and I don't want a vintage watch as a beater watch, or they were quartz, and as I mentioned, I don't want a quartz watch, or they were sort of too small. Now, I like a watch that's sort of over 38 millimeters generally. I'm open to smaller watches, and I'm trying to be open to smaller watches. But for this style of watch, the watch that I'm trying to use for this particular use, I definitely don't want a small watch. So unfortunately, no Omegas for me this time. I then did have the thought, and it's not the thought that I wanted, and it's not what I end up going with, is that Hamilton is a watch that really would suit this well. Hasn't quite got the sort of luxury feel that I was hoping to sort of achieve with this watch, but they do have a lot of watches that would actually work very well. And they would also be well made, they'd have good movements, and there's a number of them that I like, which I think would fit this sort of perspective of watch that I want perfectly. But it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It wasn't quite the watch that I wanted. I sort of put it on the back burner as a possibility, but I already have a couple of Hamiltons. I've experienced Hamiltons. I love Hamiltons. It's not quite what I wanted. I then looked at the other watches within that sort of swatch group, and I sort of thought, well, what about Longines? What about Mido? What about maybe some other watches, maybe like Rado? And I have to admit, I kept coming into the same sorts of problems. They're either outside the price range, or they were watches that I weren't really attracted to. Because I still actually have to like this watch, I'm going to be wearing it a lot. I want to look down and go, oh yeah, that's cool. I like that. That is my primary motivation behind this. I want to wear a cool watch regularly and be happy to beat it around a little bit. So I kind of wrote off Longines. I wrote off other brands like Mido. There weren't anything within the range that I either liked or at the right price range. So this is when I went to my watch box, and I go to my watch box regularly just to look at my watches, pick out watches. But this time I went with the intent of going, well, what's within my watch box that either maybe I could use, I could maybe transfer across to being the better watch, or maybe get some inspiration from. And the thought at this point did occur to me that I do have some budget watches in my collection that would be perfect. However, that's not what I wanted, and that's not what I ended up buying. But however, if I really thought about it, it probably makes more sense to buy a newer budget automatic watch. And I have a couple in my collection that would be good. I even thought and saw this watch from Aliexpress, this Tactical Frog. This actually would look and be quite cool. I think it'd be a great watch for what I want to use it for. It's not the watch I ended up with, but I put that one on the back burner as well as a possibility if I wasn't able to achieve this goal that I was set for myself. Looking further in my collection, I then saw my Christopher Ward, a watch that is brilliant, my C60. Now this one is too expensive for this use, and I don't want to use it for this use because it's one of my favorite watches in my collection, but it certainly has the quality and feel that I'm looking for. And thinking more about Christopher Ward, recently they've shifted toward this new logo, they're releasing new watches, which means they've got a whole back catalogue of watches that are out there, owned by people that might come up for sale at a cheaper price. Especially with the older Christopher Ward logo, a logo that I don't mind too much, and I certainly wouldn't mind on this style of watch. But I came up with another problem. It wasn't that I couldn't find watches within the price range. I actually could. There's actually a few Christopher Wards out there at the right price, and I think that'd be brilliant watches to own at that price. The problem was the ones that were there, I either didn't particularly like them, or they didn't sort of suit the watch that I was after. I needed something that was fairly legible and preferably have a day and a date, or at least a date. And the ones that I found, well, they weren't really fit for purpose, not for this. They might be nice watches and well priced, but not the right watch. So back to my watch box, and there's a watch in there. A watch that it cannot be used for this sort of purpose, however the brand of watch. And I thought, I wonder what Aorus has to offer. Because Aorus is probably around the right sort of quality and sort of feel that I'm actually going to be chasing. And Aorus has been around for a long time, and I know they've made lots of watches that are no longer in production, so there must be lots of second-hand Auruses out there. And as soon as I started looking, the same day that I started looking, I found the watch that I ended up buying. So I ended up buying an Aorus. But it's funny, because I never really generally buy the first watch I find. I then go around in a circle, and this has happened many times, around the circle looking at other watches, other variations, other dials, other prices, other sellers, and I come back to the watch that I found first. So yes, the first Aorus that I looked for in this sort of style and price range, I've ended up buying. So let's flip the camera. Let me show you what I end up buying. So I ended up buying a Aorus BC3, and it only cost me 600 Australian dollars. Okay, that's still a lot of money, I understand, but this watch, when it was brand new, was somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 Australian dollars. Now, one of the reasons why it was so cheap is because it's a little bit of age to it. It's probably around about 5 to 10, maybe even 12 years old. And bits and pieces that came with it are missing a few things, like the box. Yeah, it's missing the inside of the box. It does have the inner compartment, which has the warranty card things and all the booklet, which is nice, but it's missing part of that inner box. The watch itself is also missing the spare links in the bracelet, so it's set to a certain length. Strangely enough, it actually fits me perfectly, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I end up with a watch which really does something exactly what I was looking to get from this particular watch. And after wearing it a couple of days, it seems to be doing what I hoped from it, which is quite cool. It has some really nice features as well. There's a little bit of a red inside that sort of crown there, which is cool. Really nice white on black sort of aesthetics there. There's also sort of inner ring where the Aorus is, which I think is quite cool. It does have just flat sort of ends there on this bracelet. They're not integrated, unfortunately, but has the nice Aorus clasp, 3 sets of micro adjust, all milled, and as you can see, it is automatic. Now, the guy that actually sold this one to me, it was too small for him on that bracelet. Obviously, he bought it secondhand as well, so he actually had it fitted on this strap code engineered style bracelet, which I don't need to use because the original does suit me. But it means I've now got an engineer style strap code bracelet. So that's quite cool. I'll probably end up using that on another watch of mine. But if you look closely, then we're going to see some signs of love. The bezel there, scratches. Bracelet, scratches. Bottom of the clasp, definitely some scratches there. Bit of scratches on there. And that's honestly what I was kind of looking for in this watch. I was looking for a good quality brand, Aorus, good quality watch, made by Aorus, something that is very legible, looks good, feels good on wrist, which this absolutely does, but something that's not too brand new and too expensive either. Otherwise, I really would be concerned about using it for what I actually intend to use it for. So far, I'm really happy. It fits nicely, as I said. Yes, I've got no spare links left over, but that's okay because it actually fits my wrist really well. Very legible. It's a slightly bigger watch, but I think it fits my wrist nicely. And I kind of wanted it to be slightly bigger because I wanted that legibility out of it. As I've said a few times already, this was not specifically buying a watch that I desperately wanted to own and really love and cherish and sort of baby. Not at all. I wanted a beta watch, a watch that I could wear and not be too worried about a few scratches and have that sort of legibility, have that sort of tool aspect to it. And I think this is going to be, or at least I hope it to be, the perfect watch. But let's flip back to me now, because I want to talk about one final thing that perhaps you've thought of or perhaps that may be an issue in regards to this whole idea. So let's get back to me. Now, I think there's one big elephant in the room in regards to this whole idea. Buying a sort of semi-luxury watch that was a lot more expensive at the start, that is now older, has been beat up a little bit. The problem is, this watch probably needs to be serviced. And I'm sure this watch needs to be serviced. And yes, I bought this one for 600 Australian dollars. And in Australia, it's going to cost me around about $300 to have it serviced. That would then push me above my maximum limit of $800. So I've got an idea behind this. And I kind of expected that this was going to happen, so I had this in the background anyway. So I think there's going to be three options that are going to happen to me over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, or perhaps over the next 1 to 2 weeks. Firstly, I'm going to wear this watch in the circumstances that I want to wear this watch in. And very quickly, I'm going to realize that it's not the right watch for it. I need to wear my GShock. That is certainly a possibility. If that occurs, well, then this watch will then become more of another watch in my collection and may end up being sold. Second possibility is that I'm wearing this watch and it's perfect. It's great for the purpose that I've chosen it for. Yes, I still wear my GShock occasionally depending on what I'm doing that day, but it is fit for purpose and it works and I'm enjoying it. Well, then I might then invest the extra money and I'll get it serviced. I'll look after it because I still want to wear it long term as this sort of luxury beta watch. There's obviously a third option here that is, yeah, okay, I switch back to a GShock, but I enjoy this watch so much that I keep it in my collection. And maybe it just sits in my collection more as an occasional wear. And maybe at some point I'll end up getting serviced, or perhaps I'll just enjoy it as it is. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, I really hope you do, because it was a really interesting journey for me. And it was something a little bit different for me as well. And I end up with a watch that's really cool that I can use for a particular purpose. But if you enjoyed it, maybe you should check out these videos next.